Hey, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers here for a pretty special show for us. It's our 7th annual question and answer and beer sampling show. Happy to get together and do this thing. It's been obviously an annual tradition, and it's kind of a fun show for us where we leave the weekly ins and outs of following Seahawks football at the door, and we come in and we have a little bit of fun. Obviously, we talk Seahawks, we talk football, we answer some questions from listeners and watchers on our YouTube channel. We have some questions that we have from ourselves as well, and it's just kind of a fun thing. Plus, we sample some of our favorite beers. This year, we decided to do a porter. So I've brought in 3 porters to sample. Keith has brought in 3 porters. I have no idea what he's doing. I did share what I've got in my bag, but it'll be a fun show.
I
So
didn't make any final decisions on which ones that I was bringing in until last
uh,
night, so that's why you don't know yet.
cool. Oh, okay. No problem. So welcome in. It's a fun show. We've got quite a few questions this year from listeners. And we're gonna set up our drinks first. So I've got a little cooler next to me, and I've got some chilled glasses as well that I had in the freezer. And I'm gonna start with I believe, if I reach in here correctly, it's going to be a Breckenridge Brewery Vanilla Porter.
Yep, I've had that one. It's good.
Nice.
And I am starting with from Maui Brewing Company, a coconut Hiwa porter. So here's the one that I'm starting. Wait,
Ooh,
rotate. There we go.
that's great.
From Maui.
I ran into trouble. So I went to the store here in Arizona. We've got a place called Total Wine. Obviously, I should have gone to Total Beer because Total Wine only had 5 or 6 porters in its entirety, and they only sold individual samples on 3 of the or 4 of those. So I got 3, which I thought would represent sort of a diversity of flavors. And so I'm gonna start with this vanilla porter Breckenridge. I'll read some notes that were available from their website as well as a couple other websites. Ooh, this pour is really nice. Wow. It's a little frosty because I had them in the freezer too for just a little bit, get them extra cold. Plus, I have a frosty glass I stuck in the freezer, so I came prepared in that way. This is a dark malty beer, as you can see, very frosty. Ooh, nice. The look is deep dark amber, kind of a root beer color, gorgeous shade. Head is fluffy, billowy with life, and it's very attractive. It smells a little bit of vanilla, and kind of a dark roasted coffee with a little bit of chocolate. So I'm going to take a sip. Oh, yummy. That is great. Love that. All right. What do you got?
Well, like I said, I've got it's from Maui Brewing Company. It's a coconut Hawaii porter, which is supposed to be a robust dark ale with hand toasted coconut and hints of mocha. It's very lightly hopped. It's only got 12 IBUs, so it's really sweet as far as flavor goes.
I think mine was 15 for those that are keeping track,
which is very low.
and
It's good.
5.4 alcohol by
It's
volume.
it's thin in terms of its overall taste. It's which means that they didn't use a lot of different kinds of malt, and they didn't add a lot of hop flavor, which we know from the IBUs. So it kind of drinks more like, not quite water, but pretty close.
That's interesting. For a long time, I kind of avoided this style of beer, and I don't drink it regularly. I think the last time I had a porter was a Black Butte Porter. Everyone probably recognizes that brand, obviously. And it's been a while. I'm going to say at least 6 years since I've had a porter. It's not really my go-to. Stouts really aren't my go-to either. I'm usually an amber ale or hazy or an IPA in general. But this is good. This might convince me to dip into this pond a little bit more. We'll see how the rest of it
Well,
goes.
the Black Butte, which you brought up, is kind of it. At least for me, it's my standard. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about, it's from Deschutes Brewing and out of Bend, Oregon. Um, it is Black Butte Porter is the standard um, for all porters, and everything's kind of compared to it. So,
And that's the reason why I didn't choose it.
which actually I had it in hand, and my wife goes, "No, people know that one.
Yeah.
Pick something
And
else."
that's what I thought too. That's exactly what I was thinking.
So,
So, okay. So Keith, why do we do the beer sampling as part of this show in the first place?
um, because the very first year that we did the show, this very first summer, I was homebrewing a lot, and I wanted to share. And really, that's the only reason why. It's just become a tradition from that.
That is the reason. Yeah, and those were excellent, by the way. Yeah, and so we do this every year. We kind of get together, we pick a style ahead of time, and we're ready to go. But yeah, porter. So this is the first time I think that we've done porters. We've done almost every other style at this point. Maybe not so many pilsners and lagers, but maybe we should do one of those. I've kind of avoided pilsners and lagers, to be completely honest, in
Me
my
too.
the last 20-25 years. It's such a craft brewery kind of thing. And, Oregon, Washington, obviously here in Arizona, they've got quite a thing going as well. Close to Colorado. It's another big state that produces a lot of these. But yeah, I'm going to start exploring a little bit. Okay. So let's get down to business. Why are we here? We're here to have fun, do some question and answers. We did get a few questions. I'm going to open up with a YouTube watcher question. Kristen Fonte. She submitted several questions, and we can either jump around or we can kind of go in order. I'll leave that up to you, but I'll ask you your first question. What were you doing when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl?
What was I doing when the Seahawks won the Super Bowl? I was, um, by the time the game was over, I was seated on the couch with my feet up and a nice toasty adult beverage in my hand, already celebrating because,
Which leads into her next questions, which how did you celebrate?
yeah, that's how I celebrated. I celebrated with a very, very strong um, double barrel aged porter of some kind. I don't remember which one it was, but we'll get there. Um, and yeah, I was like I said, by the time the game ended, there was no drama. So I was just
Yeah,
celebrating. I was sitting back and enjoying a beverage and soaking it in is what I was doing.
absolutely. As soon as that Percy Harvin kick return happened right after the half, that was the game for me. Other than a devastating, complete meltdown of the Seahawks, that game was in hand, and it was the point where you could just kind of relax a little bit and enjoy the game and have fun.
Hmm.
Yeah, for the celebration for me as well. I think uh, for me, I got a little emotional. I mean, I opened up a bottle of wine. I remember that, and I sat down and I shed a tear or two, just because when when you adopt a team from the beginning and you just go to battle, and you ended up getting to the Super Bowl, one of the in 2005, and it didn't work, and you're back, you just come back, and once you get to that mountain and you reach the pinnacle, it is amazing how many emotions you go through. And I certainly did, but it was a lot of fun. I know that. But I was, watching the game on TV, not in person. Wish I was there, but was not. Okay. Let's stick with her on this next question. What's your usual game day routine?
Usual game day routine. So I'm assuming this is not a night game. We'll go with afternoon schedule since that's the most one. Typically, I sleep in a little bit, get up and get stuff done. Um,
Keep
whether it
yourself
be
busy.
whether it be yard work or um just stuff around the house or I don't know, just anything. Like I know that in the afternoon, I'm gonna be seated and not doing stuff. So I try and get stuff done in the morning. Um and get everything ready. And then when it comes time, then I, you know, turn the TV on, sit down. Um, Usually at that point, I've got stuff out that for my day job as a teacher, I've got grading that I'm working on or something when the kickoff starts, but that fades and I become extremely less um, productive on that as the game goes on because well,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what I'm there to do. I'm there to watch the game. Um, yeah, and just enjoy the game.
Has it evolved over time? Were you always that kind of relaxed and heading into
Um,
the game fully ready?
no, I mean yes, because typically there's this other stuff going on, and I don't want to miss a game, and so I would get stuff done ahead of time, so I wouldn't have to, and I'd also get stuff done, so I wouldn't have to stress out about it. But like like back in college, there was always stuff to do, so I usually had stuff out to study um, when the games was on, but that ended 20 years ago, and but now it's been more stuff like grading student work and that kind of stuff. But that's usually only in the beginning. I just can't stay productive on it. I'm just too invested into the game. But yeah, it's always kind of been calm. It's never been like
Yeah,
where I get
me
really
too.
worked up about it. I mean, I do like during the game, I can, especially if, you know, Pete Carroll's making some really dumb decisions with his challenges or whatever, I can get fired up. But um, I don't know. That's become less more recently as I'm just it just doesn't affect me as much. We've been through this so many times now, so
Yeah. No, I'm the same. I've evolved a little bit. I think I used to get amped up. I used to go to games too, season tickets up until '89, with my folks, and and then after that, I just transitioned to be a little bit more relaxed, kind of take it easy, take the game as it comes, not get so worked up. I'm in a good mood going into every game. I'm in a good mood coming out of any game. It's just one of those things where I compartmentalize it a little bit maybe and put it away if it's a junker, and I still watch. I've never left a game early. I've as far as watching it um, on TV, I haven't missed a game yet in the entire history of the franchise. I've either watched a game live in person, live on TV, or VCR'd on a handful of occasions where I couldn't make the live watching, but um, so far I haven't missed anything. Knock on wood. Okay, so I'm gonna take this one. Do you still have season tickets and go to a lot of the games? No, I just mentioned it. Had season tickets from the very first game in the Kingdom all the way till the '89 season with my mom and dad, and I missed quite a few games there as an adult. I had ended up going to school, and then after school went to live in Portland, so it was harder to get to games every week, but did my best. And now I live in Arizona, so I make it to one or two games per year now. I definitely hit the Arizona Cardinals Seahawks game here in Phoenix, and once in a blue moon, I can get up there to Seattle as well. So that's about it. How about you? Season tickets at any time?
no, that was never on the list of things that my family was able to afford, and so I would try and get to a game here and there. It was hard to get tickets and stuff. I started going more regularly once Seahawks Stadium, as it was known, opened up, and I got a chance to go there. But then regularly means like a game a year, and never been, um, just never been able to do it. Never been able to commit to it, and from a financial aspect. But
They
it
are very
it
spendy. When I started,
it's
games were
coming.
$15.
Yeah,
Games,
it's something that's coming. My wife and I have talked about it quite a bit, and so
nice.
season tickets may happen here soon. Well, at least I think I'm on the waiting list, but the waiting list is long, so we'll see how long that goes.
Yeah, good luck. It's for me. And the older I get, the harder it is to do because of the parking situation. I think I enjoy the game. I enjoy the atmosphere. Once I'm seated, it's good. I'm gold. It's getting prepped, driving down, parking sometimes a mile or more away, um, and paying an absorbent amount of money, anywhere from 50 to 80, $100 to park, which is ridiculous. And it would be ridiculous for anybody. And so it is hard to do, but do definitely enjoy them when I can get there. All right, Keith, what is the favorite game that you saw live?
Favorite game that I saw live? Man, that is a good question. Why don't you take that while I think?
I don't even have to think very long on this one. It was the 2005 NFC Championship game.
Oh, yeah.
It was just such a great game, and the feeling of going to the Super Bowl for the very first time, and winning that game put you into the Super Bowl, and it was such a huge game, a huge moment for the franchise, a huge victory, and a celebration afterwards that was just over the top crazy. And I went with my dad, which was just fantastic. And so that's a special memory for me for sure. Absolutely.
Cool. That's that game. I that game's awesome.
Mm.
So I would say my favorite game that I went to would have been one that wasn't a home game. It was there in Arizona back when the team didn't have its own stadium yet and they were in Tempe. And
Yeah, at the ASU stadium. Yep.
yep. And the Cardinals were kind of the team. Um, they had the Kurt Warner era and all of that. And then the Seahawks came into town. Um, and maybe I'm getting the Kurt Warner thing backwards, and it came after. But in my brain, it was in there when the Seahawks were on the rise, heading to their Super Bowl year, and um, the 2005 Super Bowl year, and Arizona was kind of thought of as the better team, and Seattle went in and just pounded them. And I
Was that
remember
Sean Alexander?
Shaun Alexander had a
Yeah.
98-yard touchdown run
Yeah.
in that game, um, and yeah, that's the that that game was fun. It was really as a road fan being there, and when we first got there, I felt like I was the only one in blue, and by the time the game ended, all the red shirts were gone, and it was 8,000 people left in the stands is all, and all of us were wearing blue,
Nice.
and that was just a really fun, experience. That was my first game as a road fan.
Nice. Yeah, Seahawks games in Arizona are fun to go to if everyone gets a chance to go. Team travels well, fans travel well here. There's a lot of relocated people from the Northwest that end up here, and so we've got probably 12. I'm going to say 12 to 15,000 fans at the games, and so there's a lot of blue jerseys, um, and it's a lot of fun. Um, Next question. How long have you two known each other? And the next question after that is how did you meet and become friends slash business partners?
Let's see. So the show's been going on for
And we're in
7
our seventh
years. We're in our
seventh
7th
season.
year.
Yeah.
So a good year before the show started, I was still writing. I was still, running the 12th Man Rising site and looking to start a podcast just to kind of expand and do more and just be more part of things. And started looking for someone with some knowledge because this was new to me. And Bill was someone who was on Twitter that we had talked a bunch and debated on there about Seahawks stuff for a couple of years.
Mhm.
And he stepped forward and was like, "Hey, I used to run this other podcast, and I kind of know my way around it." And I was living in Vancouver at the time; he was living in Portland, so that made it easy because we were close. And um,
And the important factor was I had all the gear. I
Yeah.
had the gear, just like, when you're young and you wanting to put together a rock band, and it's the guy with the gear that kind of organizes the stuff. So yeah, that was
Hmm.
my role.
Yeah. And I mean, like, really, I just didn't know what I was getting into, as far as what was going to be necessary. It was something that I wanted to try. Um, and it just has worked out great. I mean,
You got lucky,
it's
dude.
been a really fun partnership for 6+ years now.
Yeah.
And um, unfortunately, you moved to Arizona, and we can't do
Uh,
these things together.
right.
But still, it's been great.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. And the last question was from her. Um, was what made you guys decide to do the podcast and put it on YouTube? Um, and Keith basically told that story. I'd run a business and had a podcast earlier. I'm going to say like 2011 started it, and got out of that about 2015 or so. Keith and I had started talking by then, and I'd respond to his crazy ideas on 12th Man Rising, on the fan responses and stuff, and let him know how much I disagreed with him while also being nice. And I'm sure that made it that made it good, because you probably took your fair share of abuse on there.
Well,
And
as a writer, I took a lot of abuse,
yeah,
which was
yeah,
part of
fun.
that's just that comes with that comes with the territory. At first, it
Sure.
bothered me, and it didn't take very long for it to stop bothering me. And um, yeah, I don't know. You just get used to it.
Well, and one day, we'd been doing the podcast for 2 or 3 years, and I said, "Hey, YouTube's kind of getting to be a thing. Maybe we should do a video podcast." And you were like, "What?" And I said, "Oh, come on, it'll be easy. We can record it at the same time. We don't have to do a separate show. I'll figure it out." And so we end up doing it, and we've been on YouTube for what, 3 years now,
Hmm.
which is great. And and so that's kind of how we started out with the podcast and also doing the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I
But
didn't think that a YouTube podcast would do, because we just sit here and talk, and that's great for an audio podcast. But we don't have like the film and a breakdown, and since we record them at the same time, it has to work for both anyway.
yeah,
And so I wasn't sure it would work, but it's worked out great. Like, we've got a pretty good subscriber numbers on there, and for some reason people watch, and having to
yeah.
look at me hasn't slowed it down, or at least if it hasn't slowed it down in a way that we've noticed.
Amen, brother. Okay. Her last question, and we just ended up reading all these in order. Sorry. Are you fans or friends with other Hawks YouTubers? And I would say, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Dan Viennes of the Seahawks Forever podcast comes to mind first, as a longtime friend of the show. Started actually writing under Keith for
Hmm.
12th Man Rising quite a few years ago. He's got his own show, as I mentioned. He's had multiple different versions of shows. You guys are most aware of him now, though, at Seahawks Forever podcast. Does a great job, has good guests on there, works his ass off. Dana O'Gorman, again, a writer, a friend of the show. She's been on, both those guys have been on multiple times, like
Hmm.
7 or 8, 9 times over the last 6 years. Dana O'Gorman, currently with Hawk Bloggers crew over there doing the show. I think she's got her own stuff as well at Our
Yep.
Turf Football,
She's
where
got
she
her own
writes.
her own show. She's
Yeah,
I don't know. She's made up, her and the other girls there have made up some titles, and I don't remember what hers is, but um, she's like, kind of the manager of Our Turf Football, and has the Our Turf podcast, as well as her work with Hawk Blogger. Last year it was Field Goals that she was with for a local show, and she's like our go-to when we need a sub.
mm,
Extremely knowledgeable, and
yeah, very good.
always fun to have on the show.
Yeah, Sammy and George DeJure have been guests. They have the Sports on Tap brand. You guys see them all the time on Twitter for sure. They're very active there. Corbin Smith was on our show when we did it was this time last 2 years ago. We did a live show up in Seattle with Dan Viennes, where we co-branded a show, and Corbin was the guest up there. That was a fun show. We did a training camp preview show.
It was like 2 hours long or 2.5. It was forever.
2.5, 3 hours. Yeah, it was crazy. Okay. Do you want to change up beverages, or are you still working on this one pretty good? We got plenty of time too, by the way. I got a ton of questions. I'm sure you do too. We've got,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
So,
Um,
here's a question that I got that is, actually, um, remotely Seahawk related. Um, so take your top 5 current Seahawks, and then if they were beer, which beer would they be?
this is definitely a question for you, but I'll give my best shot at it. Um, beer. Can it be wine too? Like Chardonnay would be a Chardonnay. I mean, there's just no question, right? Okay. So
No, you
favorite
can do
current
you can do wine
favorite
because I
Seahawks.
think you're the wine person, you know wine
Yeah.
better, so
So current favorite Seahawks. Well, how can you not like DK Metcalf? And now if he was a coffee, he would be DK decaf. Um, I'm on a roll. What can I say?
Uh,
Um, but okay. Coffee. Let's see. Charles Cross, and it's a beer. Charles Cross is really smooth. He's a really smooth amber ale, and I like the Smithwick's red amber ale, Irish ale, from Ireland, and that's the way I see him. All right, Keith, you get 4
okay,
because I think you're
let's
going to do
see.
a better job at this.
So I would say if you go with, uh, man, so I was expecting to ask you and then just sit back and wait. Now you're gonna make me
Uh-huh.
think.
Mhm.
Um, so
Who's
we
your
start with
favorite draft pick? Why don't you start with your favorite draft
I
pick?
was I want to start with Geno Smith actually, because we already talked about the beer that I think fits him best, and that would be Black Butte Porter. It's
Mm.
good. It's standard. It's is it anything like truly special? No, but it's always good. And
Nice.
I think that's a great fit there. Um, okay, going from
That's
that,
hard. It's harder. It's hard. That's a hard question.
so I think DK Metcalf, you got to go with something that's really strong. Um,
That's true.
Freem, a company out in Hood River, Oregon, which I will be having one of theirs at the end of the show, um, has a bunch of really good double barrel aged, super strong wines or barley wine, which is basically beer that's got too much alcohol to be called a beer. And their maple barley wine is maybe the best thing I've ever had. So I would say it's strong. It's like real strong. So that would be a good one for him.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Um,
That's a great one. All right, good enough. I'm saying good enough. That one's hard. That one's hard. All right. I got a couple more questions. All of these are kind of related. They all go hand in hand. They all have to do with a single game coming up in the 2023 season against the Detroit Lions. YouTube watcher Lynn S2501 asks, the Seahawks' first game is hosting the Rams. Let's assume that'll turn out to be a walk in the park. However, game 2 is at Detroit. Is it likely to be a shootout? Likely to be a shootout, Keith.
yes, it is.
Wow. Even though
Just
the
like
average score in the NFL is 20-17, but
I think
these
it's
aren't
likely to
average offenses.
these are not average offenses. These are two of the better offenses in the NFC and two defenses that are a work in progress. I think
Mhm.
it's going to be a shootout.
Yeah,
Last year it was it 48-45?
something like that. That was crazy. Yeah,
It was
one of the highest scorings in
crazy.
the NFL last year.
Yep.
And
Um,
it's the same this year. The offenses are better with both teams, I think, and the defenses are on the rise, but not yet completely figured out. The second
yeah.
game of the season. All right. What are in this game? What are the expectations for the Seahawks? I'll go. This game's on the road. Second game of the year, 10 a.m. Both teams are expected to take kind of that step forward. On paper, I like the Seahawks roster, but Detroit's a handful. We saw that last year. Their defense isn't special. I think Seattle's going to score. I think Detroit's probably going to score unless our defense really steps up. This thing could be one of those things where you just go for it. You go and get it. It's a high scoring game. Nobody's playing defense. You just got to outscore, outlast. And Seattle has a decent shot. I mean, that's the expectation for me, I think, is it's probably a little tighter than it was last year, just based on the improvements on the defense for both teams. So I'm thinking instead of 40 some odd score for both teams, it's going to be in the 30s, 33, 31, something like that. It's going to be close. This is a team Detroit is expected to be in the NFC playoffs.
They really are.
And they are very close as far as what everyone believes out there, as far as the pundit trees, the guys on ESPN and so forth are looking at, NFC team rankings. Seattle and Detroit are 1-2, as far as being the fifth best team in the NFC. And I kind of buy into that right now. I mean, one team's likely to pull ahead, out of that race. But right now, second game of the year, I don't know. And I wouldn't feel badly if Seattle loses that game. It's early. It's a 10 a.m. game. Probably do get that win against the Rams. Second game. This will kind of tell the early season tale as far as, when we'll have our prediction show right before the season. But I'm really kind of looking at things as, being right now anywhere from a 10 to 12 win team. And if we're on that high end, this is a game we got to get.
Yeah. I would say the one thing that I like in this game that gives Seattle the advantage is the two starting cornerbacks. And in a high-scoring game where both teams are just putting up yards, putting up points, it's going to come down to getting a turnover. And Seattle is more suited to get those kind of things because of the quality of their cornerback play. And that's why I would give the edge to Seattle at this point. Easy? No. But I do think that it is a good, a good thing for Seattle going with them.
So the third question in his series, and we answered his second question kind of in our answers already. Third question is, might we see a high-powered Seattle offense take over the game and run away with it?
It's possible. It's always possible. Seattle's offense is going to be good.
I think we're going to say this all season. Virtually to me, the answer is absolutely. I mean, any game this year, I think, is going to be a threat for Seattle to do that against any defense that we face, and even some of the top defenses, because we just have a heck of a lot of firepower, and it's hard. It's going to be hard for defenses to pick one thing and stop it. I just don't see it, but it's early. So
agreed. It's not going to be something which is easy for other teams to slow down. Forget stop, just to slow them down. And they could run away with almost any game simply because of that.
All right, we're half hour into this show. How you doing on your first beer?
It's mostly gone. Let's go ahead and move on.
Mine's mostly gone too. So what am I doing for my second one? I thought my second one I'd change it up a little bit. I'm saving my best for last.
Me too.
And let me get back up to the top here where I've got my notes on the beers. So I'm going to do a Historic Brewing Company Pie Hole Cherry Vanilla Porter. Flagstaff, Arizona Brewery. It's a light, more of a dessert kind of finish with the cherry notes, but it's got the roasted chocolate and vanilla in there with a slight hint of cherry finish, according to the website.
Okay. I am going with the 5 Pine Chocolate Porter out of Three Creeks Brewing, which is in Sisters, Oregon, which is kind of not that far from Bend.
Yeah.
Bend is it's weird in that it's such a small town, but it has all these really big breweries, like big in terms of not just size, but like they're big players in the brewing industry. And Sisters is one of those that's coming along. I like this one. It's let's see, what do they say about it? A robust porter that features 2 pounds per barrel of the finest Belgian dark chocolate, creating a slightly
Wow.
roasty finish with the underlying chocolate sweetness. Um,
Nice.
I've had this one before. It is, um, yeah, you're drinking a dessert beer. This is kind of a dessert beer. This is my, um, if I get stuck at some sort of stupid board meeting or something, and I just want to go have something on the way home, uh, this would be it because it is. Let's do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice.
and because it's nice, it's sweet, it's smooth, it's tasty. So
Wow. That kind of tastes like a slightly flat vanilla cherry Coke, and add a little bit of coffee into it with a little bit of chocolate. And that's kind of what you get. Interesting. I like it. It's refreshing. It's one of those, it's lighter than the first one, and it's a little refreshing. I like it.
so now it's probably a good time. Let's talk about the fact that we're drinking porters, and what makes something a porter.
Yeah, I have no
Um,
idea, so you go.
so um, porters are a 18th century style out of London, right? So we're talking 1700s. The first mention of it, of the word, comes, in 1721, and it was a brown beer at the time. And you know how um, English like their warm brown because they serve their beer warm, and it was really just meant to be uh, a dark beer that was um, easy to brew, easy to drink, and a lot of it owes its to the ports and the shippers, and the people who unload cargo off ships were porters, and so basically it was kind of named after the people that drank it, and that's where that came from. It's also very similar when you look at the color of these. If you're watching the YouTube version, you're going to find that it's going to look a lot like a stout, and it's um, pretty similar. And they're things that are labeled porter that are closer to stouts, and other things that are stouts that really are more like porters. Um, Guinness Extra Stout was originally called Extra Superior Porter. They
Interesting.
didn't change the recipe. They just changed the name to kind of match what people were calling that style of beer. So a lot of similarities. I
Nice.
find that stouts are darker, they're more bitter. Um, if we're talking about brewing, they're brewed with more black malt or chocolate malt. Chocolate is not chocolate flavor, but the color. Um, and so they tend to be much darker. Lightness doesn't go through them at all. Porter is darker brown more than black. You can kind of get light through it, but you typically not much at all, maybe a little. But it's basically just like it's like one shade lighter of a beer.
Let me see. Yeah, mine's pretty dark, but you can kind of see the amber a little bit through it. All right. Next round of questions.
Okay.
This is from you two. Go ahead.
Uh,
You want?
I've got three from. Let's leave last names out and just say Heather. Um, Heather asks, "What's up with Jamal Adams? Is he even worth the price tag when he has spent more time on IR than on the field?"
Wow. Well, you've got two thought trains on this. One, you could, out of hand, you could say no, he hasn't been worth his contract. You could question the idea that why did we even give him a second contract? And when you take a look at the compensation and so forth. Okay. So let's just put that to bed. He's been injured. When he was available at that one season where he got the 9 sacks, that was great. But everything else has just been kind of not living up to expectations. This is a new season. I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. We argued vehemently, I think both of us, you pretty strongly, in the offseason that he should be cut and take the hit on the salary cap, but also experience the $8 million in savings, even though it was a big dead cap hit, and move on and designate him June 1st and take it over the next 2 seasons and free up that roster spot, as well as just as move on as far as expecting him to be on the field and then not having him is difficult for a defense to absorb and do that, multiple times over the last 2 or 3 seasons. It's hard. So easy answer is no. But here we are. Let's just say, let's be as optimistic as we can. You say all of those injuries that he's had are unrelated. He's got it out of his system. He's going to come in this year. They've got a special role for him identified with Julian Love coming in. He can play closer to the line of scrimmage. I would argue that's hard for him because he doesn't have the body type to hold up under that much, tackling and physicality that you need up close to the line of scrimmage. But let's just say that they use him in a unique role. He rushes the passer off the edge in special packages, and it works out. He gets 7 sacks. He's able to be available 15 out of 17 games, and we get something out of him this year, and it impacts our ability to improve on defense. That's the best case scenario for me.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, like, I don't agree with the team that he's still on the roster. I think that the money would be best spent elsewhere, and not only that, but the fact that you could spread the cap hit out over 2 years rather than having it all come in next year would have been better. But the team decided they were willing to give it one more shot because by age 25 he was a 2-time All-Pro. And they want to give him a shot at playing at that level in Seattle. And okay, if he's on the roster, then what we want out of him is for him to get back to being the guy he was earlier in his career when he was a 2-time All-Pro. A guy that comes off the edge, on the blitz package and gets to the quarterback and just makes the offensive coordinator sweat. And that's kind of the idea.
Okay. Next question. YouTube watcher Bob's Discount 1947 writes, which NFL teams outside of the Seahawks do you think are the most fun to watch and why?
Oh, that changes year to year. Right now, we already talked about them. Detroit. Detroit's been a fun team to watch because they are, kind of the scrappy, like nobody gives them a shot because they've been Detroit for so long that now that they're good, no one seems to notice. And I like their coach. I think
Yeah.
Dan Campbell's done a great job, and I just think they're fun to watch. The other one is actually Jacksonville, uh, which again is a team that we're used to them being the worst team in the league or close, and suddenly they won their division and were a playoff team last year. And part of that's because their division's trash, but still
Yeah.
they were there, and they've got a fantastic young quarterback and good coaching finally after years of not having
Yep.
that.
Yep.
And
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Like Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, that's really cool. Their defense played better than everyone thought they would play last year. And that was kind of the difference. Trevor Lawrence started playing well, and then their defense played pretty decent. I expect them to kind of improve this year. I agree with the Lions. They're fun, not when they're playing the Seahawks, but otherwise, Jared Goff is still there at quarterback. I think he's holding them back a little bit. I think if they were to acquire or replace Jared Goff at quarterback, I think that gives them even a larger opportunity to have more dynamic offensive play, and we'll see what happens there long term. And then I would put like the Seahawks in the same bucket as the Eagles, the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Chargers on offense. Like those teams for me are, the key word in this question is fun, like most fun. And those teams with the high profile quarterbacks and the big time weapons on the offensive side of the ball are fun for me to watch. There's not a lot of defense going on in those teams. Some are better than others, and quite honestly, those are the teams that are going to be in the Super Bowl conversation. And so, yeah, fun. Okay, next question from Bob's Discount. Are there any overlooked, less vetted players on this team that you feel could be potential difference makers this season?
Ooh. I mean, Bush at linebacker would fit that mold. A guy that no one really has any expectations for because he wasn't good in Pittsburgh, but is coming over because the team's desperate at middle linebacker. But he was a first round pick and looked good as a rookie before he got hurt. And since he got hurt, he's really struggled. But before that, he looked good. And if he can, with the new, you know, new home, starting over, new coaching staff, all of that, suddenly kind of return to that form, he has a chance to be a major difference maker.
Yeah, I agree. I think, anytime that you sign a free agent to a team, um, no matter how big they are, typically, they're going to kind of be overlooked a little bit. Yeah, because you didn't see them before. They're going to be new to this defense or offense, and you don't have really any idea how they're going to fit into the scheme and with other players. And I think there's a couple of players like that. Julian Love for me, and Dre Jones are two examples of players that are slightly overlooked. We know they're there, and guys like us who follow the team kind of have this expectation, but a casual observer doesn't really know until come September what these players are going to be able to do and how they affect the roster. And I think the impact that Julian Love, particularly in the safety group, is going to help the team transition away from a guy like Jamal Adams. If Jamal Adams can't play, I think having a guy like Julian Love on this roster is huge. And then Draymond Jones is a total upgrade for this defensive line over Shelby Harris last year. Shelby did okay, but the team got burned quite a bit on the outside runs. And, outside zone running really kind of nailed this team. I thought a guy like Darrell Taylor also struggled in defending that. Uchenna Nwasu did a great job, I thought, overall, but everyone else kind of just struggled a little bit. And there's a couple other guys. I mean, I just said Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor's a guy that kind of is overlooked. He had 7 sacks last year, but they all came in the last 5 or 6 games. He had a really hard, difficult time transitioning to this new defense. At the beginning of the season, they kind of narrowed his scope down as far as what they wanted him to do, and then he played really well down the stretch. I would imagine that'll be the case this year, is they'll put him in a position to be successful, and he'll have more opportunities to do that earlier in the season. A guy like Tyreek Smith, who never even saw the field last year, is a guy that there's getting a lot of buzz in not training camp, but in the OTAs and mini camps this year, is a guy that it's almost like another draft pick, going to be able to come in and be part of that rotation as far as edge players are concerned. So the edge players, the outside linebackers in this 3-4 defense is really a good, solid group. It's young. There's a lot to prove there. But if it all kind of comes together for them, Boye Mafe, Darrell Taylor, Tyreek Smith, Uchenna Nwasu, a few other guys, that could be a decent group.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Next question. When does everyone think they will release the throwback jerseys this year? Because they're finally being given the chance to do
Yeah. You talking
throwback
about being
jerseys.
able to purchase those?
Yeah, because they're going to be
Okay.
throwback jerseys to the Largent era,
Yeah.
which I have
Sometimes
been
they
waiting for years.
sometimes they do that at the very beginning kickoff weekend. They'll have all the jerseys available. I think that our game is like what, the 5th or 6th game on the schedule is
Yep.
the throwback week, and it'll be at least a week prior to that, if not more, because they want to sell those jerseys and then have people show up with those. Talk about a huge marketing opportunity. I've heard a lot of people, including Brock Heward, talk about this as far as there's really a lot of pent up purchasing power out there waiting for these retro jerseys to come out, like DK Metcalf jerseys, Tyler Lockett, and then Bobby Wagner in a throwback. What? I mean, that's going to be crazy, right? And
Are you
so
going to get one?
they're expecting to break sales records for these things.
Are you going to get one?
That's a great question. I do have a Bobby Wagner jersey. Um, will I get a retro one? That would be kind of cool, actually. I hadn't even thought about it,
Yeah, I
but
have
yeah.
a friend
Which
who's
okay.
waiting for these with the idea of getting the retro with the Bobby Wagner.
So do you go get a retro player or do you go get a 12th man or a Myers jersey?
Um, I'll probably get a player this time. I've got a couple of both. Um, and just the idea of having because it's the retro that's coming out, going and getting maybe a Tyler Lockett, just because in some ways he reminds me of Largent, and
Mhm.
having Largent, it's the Largent era jersey with the player that most resembles him, um,
So
with the name on the
are
back.
they
That'd be
doing
kind
the
of cool.
current logo with the old color scheme? How's that working?
I have no idea.
I can't remember seeing the final version that's going to come out, but yeah, I'm pretty excited though. Next
Okay,
question.
I got one more from
Oh, okay.
Heather here. Which
Sure.
center is a better fit for pass protection? Evan Brown on his 1-year deal or fifth round pick, Oluwatimi?
That's a great question, really. Evan Brown is known more for I think his pass blocking than his run blocking. He's kind of a smaller guy, wins with technique and his ability to get into space. Oluwatimi is kind of a throwback guy. He's better, a better run blocker. He's going to have to work into being a pass blocker, but he's got good people around him. It might be Bradford in the middle there, but Phil Haynes got some experience. Damian Lewis on the other side. Obviously, the 2 draft picks from 2022, Lucas and Cross. Either way, I'm excited to kind of see how that evolves. I think Evan Brown's an upgrade over Kyle Fuller, but not necessarily what we had last year. And so I think that's kind of a wash. If I was to choose, I would choose to have Oluwatimi win that job in training camp and just take my hits early in the season and have him evolve as being the long-term starter. But I don't know yet how it's going to all work. I haven't really heard any
It's hard to
any
judge
guys
these
talking
things.
about how they're doing in camp
It's
yet,
hard
and
to
it's
do these
hard.
things when you can't hit.
Yeah,
It's hard
yeah,
to judge linemen.
exactly.
I will say that the question specifically talked about pass blocking, and with that, I would give Evan Brown the edge. I think as an overall player, because Oluwatimi is bigger, stronger, more powerful, I would give Oluwatimi the edge. But in pass protection, simply because of superior technique, I would give it to Evan Brown.
And experience, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, last question, I believe, from Bob's Discount, 1947. What position is currently the biggest concern in terms of depth and talent on this roster?
Okay, there's two. I have to pick one. Nose
Well,
tackle and
yeah, I
middle
mean,
linebacker.
yeah, that's what I wrote down too. Yeah,
Nose tackle, you've got a rookie as a starter and essentially nothing as a backup until Brian Monet gets healthy. And at middle linebacker, you've got Bobby, who's awesome but getting older, and uh, a reclamation project and nothing else until um, Jordan Brooks gets healthy. And that's not a lot of depth at either one, and it's going to be a struggle. It's right up the middle of the defense too.
next question. How would you rate Pete Carroll and John Schneider's vision for this team in the post Russell Wilson era? I'll trade back and forth with you on this one.
I
Um,
think I would say I like where they're going. I think the fact that they had something that was working with Russell Wilson, and they kept trying to run that back every year, and they were getting less and less in return. So finally, they went ahead and said, "Okay, Russ wants out. We're going to let him out, and we're going to shift." And they shifted the offense to something different. They're trying something completely different now, rather than patch holes and try and keep it going. They went ahead and were okay with a little bit of a rebuild, and it's paid off great dividends to them already.
Yeah. So
In
hold on.
F-Birth last year.
A little bit of a rebuild. Now, if I was to take that quote March 1st of 2022 and said this is going to be a little bit of a rebuild, I would have been slapped crazy by our fan base.
And me.
Yeah. So okay, so for me, I give it how would you rate it? I give it an A plus. I mean, what's not to like, right? You take a look at it. The trade of Russell Wilson, we've got maximum value back, couple first round picks, et cetera, and 3 players that definitely were serviceable. Noah Fant still on the roster and his 5th-year option at tight end. The 2022 draft, dude, knocked it out of the park. Cross, Mafe, Walker, Lucas, Woolen, Kobe Bryant, Derek Young, and then um, Geno Smith. The belief in Pete Carroll and Geno Smith, and the fact that he had the year that he had, and it was a rebuilding year, and we got into the playoffs. I mean, that's huge, really. And then this offseason comes in. We talk about Geno's contract, which was a great contract, not only for Geno because he finally got paid, but it was great for the franchise too. I thought John Schneider did a masterful job on orchestrating that. And then 2023 free agency, we go out and spend big bucks on Dre Jones, and then Julian Love and Evan Brown come in to kind of complement that. And then I thought we knocked it out of the park again in the 2023 draft with Witherspoon and Jigba in the first round, and Derek Hall and Charbonnet and Bradford. The team and the coaches are raving about these players that were drafted in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th round. Bradford, Cameron Young, Oluwatimi, McIntosh, Jarek Reed. All these guys are going to make the roster, and it sounds like they're going to have heavy rotation minutes, if not starting. And so I think you really got to if you step back and you take the homer glasses off and you just look at it objectively, there's just no way that you could look at all of that and say that they just haven't done about as good a job as anybody could have done, considering the situation of getting Russell Wilson off the roster. So that's a hard job, and they did it.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I can think of that as a retort to that would be that by going with an aging Geno Smith, even though you got more out of him than anyone ever thought, um, you set the franchise back in terms of the rebuild by not going and getting a quarterback this year. By actually being good when you weren't expected to be, you
It's a
left your
crapshoot, Ethan. You know it.
you left yourself in a position to not go and get
It depends on
a
how good they turn
quarterback.
out.
I know.
It depends on how they turn out.
I'm not advocating for this. I'm just thinking like that would be the one thing, because at this point now the roster is good. And if Gino does kind of what everyone expects, which is play good for a couple more years and then age to start to get to him, they're going to need a long-term answer at quarterback and not be in position to get one. Personally, I think, okay,
You're
draft a
right.
project and develop them. You've got at least 2 more years.
And
Um,
they could be looking at Drew Lock as that answer. We just don't know yet. I'm skeptical of that, but we have to trust the process at this point of a team that has done a really good job at the quarterback position for a long time, and we'll
mhm.
see. Okay, one more question from Bob, and then we'll transition to a few questions from both of us to each other. Has there been a more fun game than the Packers Seahawks 2014 NFC Championship game?
Wasn't that the late comeback where Wilson hit
Yep, Jermaine
Curse
Curse.
for that one?
Yep.
Yes, there has been more fun games than that. I would say the Super Bowl the year before was more fun than that.
That's the one
Uh,
I was thinking about for sure, right?
um, in part because the ending of that game was fun. Like the
Yes.
late touchdown, getting the onside kick, and then, getting the other score, all of that,
Marshawn
like
Lynch, right? Yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
end of that game was amazing, but the first 3 quarters of that
Yeah.
game
The first
were
54 minutes were
were
crap.
were crap. It was
Yeah,
not a
right.
fun game to
Not an
watch.
enjoyable game. Not an enjoyable game at all. In
I
fact,
would
you
say
were
the
probable, 97 percentile as far as chalking up to a loss heading into third quarter for sure.
Yeah, the Detroit game last year was more fun in my mind because it was fun and competitive and all these things happening throughout the game, not just in the last 6 minutes. But at the same note, I get it. Like the last bit of that game to come back and beat a team that everyone had left you for dead, and to come back in the last
That's
6
super. Yeah,
minutes
those
and
that
and
that
and
last
get
six
that.
7 minutes in that game were epic, no question, just absolutely. But as a game and as a whole, I would say the Super Bowl. And the reason for me was because it was against the Denver Broncos, like the arch nemesis of this franchise for the first 20 years, 25,
Mhm.
30 years.
Freaking
And to go
LA.
in there and kick their asses, and Peyton Manning and this number one historic offense just completely all over the field. And Cam Chancellor with that hit to set the tone against Demaryius Thomas and the interceptions, and you know, and Russell Wilson is a second year player having a great game, and it was just a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and the Percy Harvin run back at the halftime, I was giddy. I mean, that made me just completely giddy, and I knew that we were going to win at that point. And then the
Yeah.
whole game, the rest of the game was kind of a cakewalk, and they
Came
still
out of
kept scoring
halftime
too.
I came out of halftime a little worried because I was
A
thinking, I'm
letdown.
like, the team could let down,
Mhm.
Denver makes the right adjustments. They've got historically the number 1 offense of all time. Um,
Yeah.
they can make a game of this, like, nothing was set in stone, and then that Percy Harvin run back, and you're like,
Was there anything more satisfying as a human being to you to see the faces of John Fox and Peyton Manning on the sideline during the Percy Harvin run back? Because they later showed that, in the kind of the replays, and the stunned silence on their side of the field was glorious to me.
mhm.
Absolutely the best moment in football that you can have, I think, is to just literally shock a team into submission, and that's exactly what that was.
One of my favorite, parts of that was, they do like yep, a bunch of players are mic'd up and they're showing some of that stuff. And you've got guys on Denver's team talking about which player should be the MVP in the third quarter. And basically they were like, I hope they give it to someone on that defense because,
Yeah,
give it to
right?
Russ for sure, but that defense is and they were talking it was the fourth quarter hadn't even started yet, and they had given the game to Seattle. By then it was over, but you know what I mean? Like
Wow. I don't
it
think
was
I'd seen that clip. That's crazy.
yeah.
Wow. Nice. Okay. I've got before we get into our next beer, which we'll do very shortly here. And this show, by the way, if you haven't gone through this journey with us before, this is our one of our longest shows of the year, if not the longest. And we just kind of it's our show, it's for us. We don't care. I mean, we care, but we don't really care how long we go in this show. We're going to answer a bunch of questions. We've already done our viewer questions that I've had, but I do have a full list of questions that I've prepared specifically for Keith, knowing him as well as I do. Some of these are football related. Most of them are, but there might be a couple. Last year, I think I questioned you on physics and some law of whatever, and
Yes,
and I
yes, you did.
and
I
so
don't
we'll see
remember
how
which
that went.
one now. I'd have to go back and look, but
Yeah,
there is that.
I think it was having to do with consciousness, and if consciousness is required for, um, if a tree falls type of thing, and all that kind of stuff. Okay, first question for you. Does Gino now? Gino's contract was heavy incentive laden,
Mhm.
so this is a question regarding that. Does Geno Smith surpass his top 5 statistical categories he set in the 2022 seasons? Completions, completion percentage, touchdowns. I can go over the fine details, yards, and interceptions.
Um, it's hard to say no
It's hard to say no.
because the offense is going to be better. The offense around him is more talented. The weakness up front that they had in the middle of that offense has a chance to go away once Bradford and Oluwatimi get settled. They're better, more talented at receiver. They're more talented at running back. They still got the tight ends together.
And Geno Smith, second year in this deal as a starter. That
Yeah.
can't be understated.
I have a hard time saying no to any of that.
So check it out. Now here's the numbers.
The interceptions would be the one that I would say because he did have a lot more turnovers down the stretch. And he is, his early in his career when he was a starter, he had a lot of turnovers, and so he did great the first half of the year last year, taking care of the football. But I don't know if that's
So
going
you
to maintain.
okay? I'm going to give you the numbers on each one of these, and you tell me up or down.
Okay.
Completions 399. That's a lot of completions.
It is. I'm gonna say, God, that's a good number though. I'll go up. But the reason why I'm hesitating is simply because if the offense is as good as we think it's gonna be, they're gonna be running the ball a lot. They're gonna be ahead a lot, and that's gonna cut the number of completions down.
Yeah, but they're also going to complete more third down opportunities.
They are. They're gonna have more. They're gonna string together drives more, which create more opportunities for. That's why I'm gonna say up, but just by a tiny little bit.
I don't personally know how he could get any better than this, but it is statistically it's possible, but probable, I'm not sure. Completion percentage 69.8.
Um,
And Russell Wilson never achieved that.
no, he didn't. But Russell
That's a
Wilson also
franchise record.
Russell Wilson also threw the ball deep all the time. He didn't take the
Geno
easy
Smith threw the ball deep.
Yeah, but Russ never took the easy completion. He always went for the big play.
Geno Smith was the highest rated deep thrower in the NFL last year, according to Pro Football Focus.
True, because when he picked his spots a lot better than Russ did, as far as throwing it deep.
I agree with that.
He took what the defense gave him a lot more, which is what led to that. And again, if you are winning games and you don't need that big play because you're already up by 10 points, you're going to be more likely to take that check down, and that's going to lead to higher completion percentage. I want to say that's so high, 69. He was at 78 for most of the season, and then it
dipped
dropped.
quite a bit.
He had a couple of off games near the end, and it dipped. But he was at 78 for most of the season. I'm going to go above just slightly.
If that happens, if both those things that you just said would go up, he's gonna be the Pro Bowl quarterback in the NFC.
Oh, if both of those things go up, the way the NFC is, yeah. I mean, he would have an MVP chance.
Touchdowns 30.
Down.
Really?
Yeah, I think they're gonna be a lot more rushing touchdowns next year than there were last year.
Yeah, unless he throws, he has some red zone stuff inside the 20 and he can take advantage. Otherwise, I agree with you. I think anything inside the 10 is going to be handed off. Yards 4,282. That's a lot of yards.
That is a lot of yards.
But it doesn't stand up to like where Patrick Mahomes are and some of the other pass happy offensive quarterbacks are. But 4,200 yards in this offense
and Pete Carroll and a Pete Carroll team. I've said if his
conversions,
if his completion percentage and total completions both go up, then his yards is going to go up. So I'm going to go up.
Interceptions 11. You already said that there's a high probability that goes up. I agree with you there.
I bet he's
and
going to be
just by
somewhere
virtue
between
of
11 to
attempts.
15. Yeah.
Yeah, just by the virtue. Okay. Bonus question. QBR 60.8, quarterback rating 100.9. Those go up or down?
He was only 60 point. Oh, he got sacked a lot. The offensive line was poor. I'm like, why was he down in the 60s? I thought he would be up higher than that. That'll go up. He'll get sacked less, and QBR punishes quarterbacks for getting sacked even when it's not on them.
You talking about?
Um,
Oh yeah. Okay.
um,
How about the quarterback rating just overall?
um,
100.9 was last year.
he'll have if he has less touchdowns, it'll go down. So,
That's a hard one.
because
That's
if
a
he
hard
has
one.
less touchdowns and more interceptions,
I tell you what, if he's up close to 110, he's going to be in the MVP running,
yeah,
like top 2
yeah,
conversation.
it'll be
He has an
him.
opportunity. This offense with Shane Waldron and the players we're bringing back, plus the additions of Njigba and Charbonnet and McIntosh receiving out of the backfield, I think it's a little bit more dynamic than Dallas or Homer. And then you add the potential of having a fixture at the center position and possibly at right guard. Woo! That could be fun. That could be a fun race. All right. Completely off topic football wise. We've had too many football related questions, so I had to throw this one in there. What are your thoughts around the Trailblazers Damian Lillard trade request?
I was going to ask you that question because you're the Blazer fan. I'm in the area, so I hear it all. I've heard a lot of talk about it over the last couple of years, but I was a Sonic fan.
And the reason that I
Um,
brought it up is it's still a, Vulcan owned operation.
oh,
So they're
absolutely.
semi-related, and of course
Yep.
everyone knows Damian Lillard, obviously. But
I got to tell
yeah,
you, I'm like I said, I'm not a Blazer fan, but it is almost impossible to not be a Dame fan.
sure.
And he's such a good guy and such a pillar of the community and every that. Him asking for a trade because he wants to go win a title before he's done, and the team is trying to rebuild around him. I'm I'm okay with that happening. I thought that um, using the draft pick when they couldn't get a trade for a star to put next to him, using the draft pick on a guy that people believe is going to be a star, um, was the right move. But it also meant that Dame was going to ask out, and you knew that. And now they have to commit to a rebuild. They have to commit to putting guys around, um,
Yeah.
Sharp and Scoot.
Yeah, it's hard for me because it's definitely a admission that it's over. This
Yep.
run is over. And it
Yep.
and it has been for a while.
But
Let's
it's
be honest. It
they've
has
been in
been
the
for a
lottery
while.
for the last 2 years. I mean, they tanked 2 years ago when Dame got hurt, but last year they were trying to win, and Dame was healthy, and they were still a lottery team. They still ended up with the 3rd overall pick.
Yeah, it's hard because, some of the blame goes to the previous GM, not the current guy, Cronin.
Mhm.
But the sad part is that, Dame was on the roster for what, 11, 12 years, and they couldn't
They
build anything around him. They couldn't
Yep,
do it. They couldn't get it done.
they
And
got
that's
to the
hard in Portland. So that makes to me, that's the best opportunity I think you're gonna have as a franchise for a while,
Yep,
possibly,
you got to the
and you
conference
can't get it
finals
done.
once in
Yeah, you
Dame's
can't get it
tenure.
done. It's kind of a sad testament to the market, in Portland. It just is. It's one of those things. I think their best shot is to do it organically, homegrown and draft and young players, and that's what they're going to try to do because nobody wants to come there as far as a free agent is concerned, and it's hard. All right,
So, one of the
um,
drawbacks to having a beer show and drinking is, we gotta take, like, a 2-minute break. So I will be
I'll
right
stay
back.
on. I'll
Okay.
stay on. You go. All right. I was going to ask Keith. This podcast has got 466, 67 consecutive shows at this point. We haven't missed a week, and sometimes we do 2 or 3 shows a week since we started, which is great. We take it seriously and all that good stuff. I was going to ask Keith. This podcast will surpass its 500th episode sometime in September. What should we do to commemorate the occasion? I don't know. I think maybe we should have a really good heavy guest laden show where we bring on everybody and we just kind of have a fun show. It's going to be probably in season, and we'll see what the availability is at that point. But that would be fun. Um, I'm gonna go to the next question. What player on offense and defense are your top candidates for breakout player of the year? Um, I think breakout player, you want to look at the skill position players for sure. But you could take a look at the offensive line as well, I think. Um, Zach Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh are candidates. Jackson Smith and Jigba, the rookies. Alan Bradford, Oluwatimi, obviously on the offensive line. Um, but what's a guy that's been around on the offensive side that could have a breakout season? Dwayne Eskridge, I think, is a guy. He's early in camp now, but healthy, and apparently has shown a lot of burst, and he's got the route tree down. He's been around Geno Smith now for a season, heading into his second season together with Geno as the starter. And if he stays healthy, he could have a real good impact on this roster, I think. A guy that's got really solid speed, 4.3 speed, and he was a dynamic kick returner in college, had a great Senior Bowl before we drafted him, and then he got hurt. We're talking about Dwayne Eskridge, Keith. I asked the question, what player on offense and defense are your top candidates for breakout player of the year? And I'm talking about D. Eskridge now as a candidate. And I think he is a candidate if he stays healthy. Now, with the addition of Njigba and Derek Young kind of emerging last year as a guy that possibly could earn more touches this year, it's going to be hard for Eskridge, even when healthy, to have an effect on the offense. But if he can be part of that kick return game and work himself in to a role on the offense, whether it's gadget plays, if they want to run him in that way to just at least get him on the field once in a while, he might have a breakout year. How about the defensive side, Keith? What player on defense are your top candidates for breakout player of the year?
I would start with Boye Mafe. I think that he was used in a weird role because he was the backup, and they rotated him in and that kind of stuff, and then he got stuck with the taking over for Daryl Taylor in running plays, which wasn't his strength, but he was better at it than Daryl Taylor.
Yeah,
And they
that's
never
exactly
really
right.
unleashed him to go be the guy that he was in the draft process. And I think that he's earned a shot to go be a more dynamic playmaker.
Okay, so while you were gone, so I'm going to ask this question, and then I'm going to prep my third beer. This podcast will surpass its 500th episode sometime in September.
Damn.
What should we do to commemorate the occasion?
I don't know. That's a great question. We got to do something.
Yeah. Maybe we should have every guest we've ever had on the show and just, have a nice little round robin thing. It'll be in season, so it'll be hard to get everyone together, but we can give it a go.
If we had a producer, which we don't, but if we had a producer, what we would
Hi,
do,
I'm producer Bill.
is I would put them in charge of going back through the last 499 shows and finding the worst takes that you and I have had,
Yeah.
and throwing them in our face for an episode.
It's amazing how sure you can be when you got a microphone in front of you and you're talking about something that you've got a lot of conviction about, and you make the argument. Now, sometimes, as you know, Keith, we take a role on this show for the purposes of enjoyment and entertainment, and we kid ourselves sometimes. Did you really mean that? No, not really, but it turned out well. Um,
It's
I
true.
think I think that we could probably get in trouble on something like that, though. That would be funny. That would be funny, actually.
Anything that I had to say about Geno Smith as a starting quarterback before
Oh
the
my
season
God, right?
started, is automatically
A candidate. Yep.
a candidate for the worst take of all time. So there's that. I mean, the thing is, okay,
You did such a great job, Keith. I have to hand it to you. You did such a great job with panning the idea of Geno Smith as a quarterback who could lead this franchise into the playoffs. That was absurd. So
it was
absurd
absurd.
that you sold me, the internal optimist, to move off my spot where I said, Gino, it could happen. This is a good offense around him. You surround him with good players. You give him an opportunity, blah, blah, blah. I think we could win 10 games. And you were like, what? 10 games? No way. And then you pounded me down for like 2 months, starting this time of the year until we got to the, prediction show. And I ended up on 5 wins in my prediction show. Uh, Same as you, right? And I really do attribute that, um, kind of whittling away my soul to your ability to sell the idea that Geno Smith was going to be awful.
Uh, Look, um, it's incredibly clear how wrong everybody was about Geno
No
Smith,
doubt. No
except for
doubt.
Pete
Right.
Carroll.
That's true.
But at the same time, like, find me another example of a guy who is that bad early in his career and that good after like time. You're gonna struggle.
I think,
Rich
the some of the
Gannon comes
bad
to
can be
mind.
attributed to the teams that he was on too and the rosters that were
I mean, he was on the
surrounding him.
Jets, so
Yeah.
there's some of that.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so
So
we
I
had
got
a
another question for you.
okay, so we had a question come in the chat. What are
Oh,
your
okay.
thoughts on the new NFL rules? Do you think the scores will noticeably change?
Um, Interesting. The scores. No,
Yeah.
I don't think that it will impact the scores. Um, I maybe. Okay, but I'm talking not very much, like 3 points a game. And the reason I say that is because the average starting you gotta look at average starting position, how many drives you get per game, all that kind of time of possession, etcetera. And I think it really it has a minimum impact, really. I mean, I get the idea that the players, and I'm talking return stuff in particular and downing it and then having it brought back out to the 25 as having more frequently. And really, if you take a look at kick returns, the average kick return versus bringing it out to the 25, it's kind of a wash, really. And if it comes out to increasing safety for players, I'm going to side with that. I've been around a long time, been around long enough to know that injuries suck and they really impact players and careers. And I think overall, it probably won't have a big impact. And thanks, Kristen, for that comment. Good
Um,
question.
yeah, I'm looking through. I think that a lot of the rule. I mean, there's safety concerns about launching themselves and what that is, and penalties for tripping and um, play clock stuff after an instant replay reversal. Um, I mean, I think overall, like, I think that it's going to be a change that we don't notice much of, and that I just don't know if it'll come up um, that often in games.
So this question was already asked, but I'll ask it and then we kind of reframe it a little bit. Which position group on the roster is the weakest? We've already kind of discussed that. Will the Seahawks address it in any substantive way before the trade deadline, Keith?
Before the trade deadline,
Yeah, gives it a little extra month and a half after the season starts to kind of make a
I
decision
don't
on
know if
whether or not
you.
we have to do
The
anything.
thing is, you can make trades mid-season on defense, and have them work out. On offense, it's so much harder because guys that haven't been in there, um, didn't go through training camp learning all the little nuances and everything that the coaches want, it's real hard to do anything with. But on defense, you can do it. And do they? Does getting guys back off injured reserve count? Because getting Jordan Brooks healthy and on the field could be a massive upgrade.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. You
at
did
middle
mention the middle
linebacker.
linebacker. Yep.
And same, Brian Monet probably doesn't have that same effect, but it could be a thing. I think it's more likely that they add someone to one of those two positions during training camp or right before the season starts, when other teams are making their cuts down. That somebody, a good player, got beat out by a rookie and is getting cut for salary cap reasons, and Seattle goes out and grabs him. Um, and I think if that situation shows up, that's when you'll see the Seahawks make a move. I don't know if a trade is in the works, but we've seen stranger things.
Okay. While I'm asking this question, get your third beer ready to go.
Eh,
Um, and I'll answer it. So, does JSN Jackson Smith and Jigba have a legit shot at leading the team in receptions in 2023? Legit shot. Yes. Yes, he does. And the reason that I say that is that this guy's going to be a slot receiver, just by virtue of the position, and the route tree that he will be running primarily. I understand they want to move him on the outside occasionally and so forth, and they'll move him around interchangeably with the other receivers. But with a safety valve kind of mentality and a chain mover, as JSN was in college in his successful junior campaign or sophomore year prior to this draft. Um, he was masterful at that. He's a great technician as far as a route runner. I think that if Gino can build rapport with him early, and by early, I'm talking right now, if they're working out occasionally together and kind of getting to know each other, he's got an opportunity. This guy's a very skilled guy, top receiver in the draft. And you've got Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf that are going to get some double teams, and this guy's going to be left open, and covered by safeties and linebackers out of that slot. And so he does really have a good shot at being very close to leading the team in receptions, which is almost impossible to do as a rookie wide receiver. I'll just make that clear right up front. It's hard, but he has a shot.
Well, he's going to be the third option at receiver, and
But he could work himself into the first option, is what I'm saying.
yeah, I'm just saying that I think he's going to be the third option because Gino wants to go to DK first and foremost because those are touchdowns, right? And he's going to look at Lockett because Lockett is so sure-handed. He'll go get stuff that you don't think anybody could get. So he'll look at those guys. But you're right about it's if they're running those guys on deeper routes over and over and over again, um, and those are covered because teams are scared of Seattle beating them over the top. JSN's going to get a lot of opportunities in the middle. To him and Noah Fant.
Okay. We're going to go on to our third beer now
Okay.
out of our three samples. And Keith, what do you have for your third
Okay.
and final?
So I've got a special one that I don't actually think you can buy. It's from Freem, which is a Hood River brewery, and it is a rum barrel aged porter. So
Oh,
they took a good porter and then aged it in rum barrels. Um, and
wow.
it was a one-off thing that they did, an experimental beer that I got access to a few bottles of because I, at the time, was part of basically their beer club, their Union 405 or 541. And so you had to have that and then order them special. And I saw that one, I was like, I gotta have it. Yeah, so it is. They
Nice.
don't because of the way Frame makes their bottles and stuff. They don't put a lot of the same information on them that you'll see on other ones, but um, if I remember right, it's up about 11%. And is super, super tasty because I have had one of these already in the past. Oh, and just the smell, just the
Nice.
smell.
So I have a Founders Porter,
Mm-hmm.
vanilla porter, I believe. I think it's just a regular porter, but it's 6.5 alcohol per volume, but it's 45 IBUs.
Yep. Founders
Um,
is a good porter.
yeah, this was the highest rated porter available that I could buy. And it's as dark as the beer that I've ever seen. It's midnight black. There's no way that you can see through this. It's dark. It's if you painted your house, you would yeah, it would just
Mm-hmm.
you would just disappear. Um, so the notes on this are its smell, baker's chocolate espresso, just a touch of smoky with a light maple syrup sweetness on the end. The taste follows the smell, espresso with baker's chocolate, um, bitter espresso like. So if you like coffee, if you like your espresso coffees, you might like this. Absolute blackout though in appearance. Um, lots of roast, lots of roast. Like when you smell this, it all you smell is like the chocolate and the deep dark caramel with almost burnt with um coffee. So that's crazy. All right, I'm gonna take a sip.
Okay. So while you're drinking there,
Oh,
um,
that's nice.
you are um, one of the bigger audiophiles I've ever met. You go to concerts on the regular. Um, what was what is the best show? Maybe not the best band, but the best show that you've been to?
The best show that I've ever been to is Pink Floyd at the Kingdom for the Pulse tour. And I can't give you a date. I'm gonna say 1996, something like that. Anyway, I saw Pink Floyd twice live, and they're in my top 5 concerts of all time, just because of the show. I love the music, but B, the show itself was just outstanding. Even in the Kingdom, the sound was bouncing around a little bit, but the show itself was just crazy. 3rd best concert I've ever been to in my life was Black Crowes opened up for Tom Petty in the Gorge, and the Black Crowes were great, and I was about 15th row center.
Wow.
But Tom Petty came out, Keith, and started at like 10 on the scale of 1 to 10 as far as sound and energy and all that stuff. They just immediately came out and just like boom, right in your face. And somehow, some way, this band found a way to get more out of their amps and their energy level and turn this thing up to an 11, 12 halfway through this show and kicked my ass. I mean, it was one of those things. It was so much joy and amazement in the fact that I was watching this in person. I was just my mouth was open. I mean, it was crazy. So if anybody's been to that show that's watching this thing, leave a comment. I'd be curious, but it was fantastic. So those are my top 3. I've got quite a few, in my history, but those are difference makers somehow, some way. Okay, so I have a wackadoo question for you. Yeah,
Okay.
that's semi-tinged with physics, but maybe not. But who knows? Who knows? So, considering the recent whistleblower disclosures of late about the government in possession of craft and technologies not of this world, Keith, what is your best guess slash theory as to what these things are and where they may have come from? Or do you dismiss the entire phenomenon?
I go back and forth. That I've seen so that once the Air Force started, or actually it was the Navy, started releasing footage from a while ago, but it's still like it's evidence and that kind of stuff. You're like, you have to reconsider. And I know that it's one of those things where you start talking about UFOs and everyone just says you're crazy, but I think the evidence is starting to point out that maybe it's not. And I don't know. Like I said, I go back and forth on it. Um, right now, I'm kind of in the thought of that it's probably just people love a good conspiracy, and a lot of details are fuzzy, and a lot of what you want to be evidence can be faked via today's technological tools. You know, you can edit video and the whole deep fake thing and all of that. So I'm skeptical any of this stuff actually exists. But at the same time, I absolutely do not believe that we are alone in the universe. There is too many other life capable planets for us to be the only ones. The question is, how do you get here, knowing the limits of physics? And
Yeah, maybe the limits though are understood to our limitations.
true,
And there are other ways like interdimensionality,
yeah,
other dimensions, other ways of transcending, what on and on. But
yeah.
yeah, I was just curious of your
So
answer. It's interesting. It's the phenomenon is interesting to me only in that I'm curious, and it sparks my curiosity, and
yeah.
I know it does you too. You're a trained physicist, and so yeah, something like that would be true. Okay, have another question, then you can ask a question. Um, Actually, I've got 2 questions. Actually, I've got 3 questions. Do you have a favorite beer recommendation for our listeners that is not in the group that we're talking about today?
Oh,
And brief. You gotta be brief.
I gotta be brief. Um, our
This is a
listeners are
conversation right here that you could take a half hour with this answer.
I could. So I will say this. If you're in the Seattle area, um, Pike Brewing's Kilt Lifter is, um, their Scotch ale is as good as it gets. And yeah, it's at this point, if you're in Seattle, everyone knows about it, but um, don't be afraid to go back and give it another shot because it's still as good as you remember. Um, anything if you're out near the beach from Pelican Brewing is good. Um, they have different restaurants and whatever on the Oregon coast, and they're all excellent, and worthwhile. And then Freem, which is the beer I'm drinking now. I've never had anything from Freem I didn't like, and that's including styles I don't typically like. They've
Is
made
most of
some.
that they bottle their stuff, right? You don't have to go get a growler or whatever
No, yeah, they
someplace.
bottle it. Yep.
Okay. I don't
Um,
have any of that. I don't have access to that here in Arizona.
no.
That would be great.
Um, Freem was like the I'm gonna make up a year, 2018 Mid-Sized Brewer of the Year at the Great American Brew Festival, which in brewery terms, you're either Budweiser or you're a mid-sized brewery. And for them to be the brewery of the year shows you where they're at and how much they're respected around the industry. Th- uh, there are, like I said, there are beers that they make that I've got a chance to try because of the union thing. I don't like sours. They made a good sour. I really don't like pilsners and things that remind me of Bud Light,
Mhm.
but they make a really good light beer. Like, you know what I mean? Like everything they make is good. So if you can get it, it's Freem. It starts with a P, um,
Nice.
lowercase p, capital F, Freem, and they make really, really good stuff.
All right, you got the next question.
All right. So, so you live in Arizona, and Arizona, especially this time of year, is starting to get just unlivable.
Yeah.
Which are you more likely to to want to be around? Extreme heat or extreme cold?
Extreme heat for me. That's an easy answer. I wouldn't be here if I did. Just so you
Mhm.
know that the current temperature, can you see that?
That's just 110.
110 out right now.
God
Yeah.
damn.
It's supposed to be 115 in 2 days.
I used to live down there. I honestly
Yeah.
thought
You
I
you
thought
you
I thought I was gonna die. It
yeah, you
was
get all your stuff done before 8 or 9 in the morning. That's basically what it is. I've got some work I need to do on the roof. I've got to get up there, but I'm gonna start tomorrow morning at 5:30. I kid you not, because if you're up there, you're fully exposed. By 7 o'clock, you got a sunburn. It's nuts, and you've just completely sweated through everything you're wearing. Yeah, fun. Okay.
so, would you this is a couple of would you rather questions. Would you rather have super sensitive taste or super sensitive hearing?
Wow. I guess I would rather have super sensitive taste because I think super sensitive hearing is could be really cool, or it could be just something. It could be your worst nightmare, and so I'd rather take a chance on the taste.
Okay. Would you rather have a personal maid or a personal chef?
A personal maid. Yeah, because I can cook. So I am not afraid to get in the kitchen and prep and do all the cooking and cleaning. I I don't mind cleaning, to be completely honest, but it's not my favorite. So if somebody could come around and clean, that would be amazing. And I've had that in the past, and it's kind of cool. But I haven't had anybody clean my house other than me for years now. So
Okay. Would you rather have a pause button for your life or a rewind button?
what would you be able to do with the pause? Like, are there restrictions around that? Because
I
you
don't know.
perpetually live in pause and just kind of,
No one else moves, just you.
yeah. I would guess I would do the rewind, but you got to be careful there because I don't have any regrets. Yeah, I need to make that clear. I don't have any regrets, but it'd be cool if you could go back and bank on some Amazon stock, and set yourself up for life, and then you let things play forward, and you know things would change, if you had, if you were didn't have to worry about money.
Yeah,
That would be an interesting thing. But pause is interesting too because you could reach a point of pure bliss and happiness and push the pause button, and maybe you stay in that for a long time. I don't know.
I
That's
don't
kind
know.
of creepy and freaky as well. Kind of sounds like taking drugs or something, but um I think rewind.
Okay. I don't know. Pause sounds really intriguing to me because there's never enough time for me to get everything done or sleep. Those are two things that never seem to happen. I never seem to get everything done, and I don't seem to get any sleep because I'm so busy. So the idea of a pause button sounds great.
Yes, I get that though. Yeah.
And then last one on this group would be of all the possible superpowers, which one would you most like to have?
I've always wanted to fly. I've been dreaming about flying since I was a little kid, as far back as I can remember. Some of the most memorable dreams I've had have been either in flight or levitating. Um, and I think it would just be kind of super cool. Just not because I want to get somewhere, I want to go somewhere in particular, but because I would enjoy, I think, feeling that freedom of just being able to be above things and not have to worry about traffic and other people and things that are in chaos that are down below. If you're up above, you're kind of above that. I think I would enjoy that.
It's interesting because that is stereotypically the answer, or it was for a very long time. And more recently, kind of the pulp culture discussion has come around. Well, flight is a way to get somewhere. Wouldn't teleportation be better because you could just be there already?
Interesting.
Um, and then from
Well,
that,
I
it comes
mean,
down.
I come from a place of, enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
And I still believe in that. Really. I mean, that's kind of one of my pillars that I really kind of live by is enjoy those moments, enjoy the journey along the way, because that's really the good stuff. And I don't think I'd want to skip that on the regular.
Cool. Okay, your turn.
Okay, if we didn't do a Seahawks football podcast, Keith, is there another subject matter you would love to discuss on the regular?
Wow. I think that it would be kind of cool to because my day job is currently as a teacher, and to do an education podcast, one where you talk to other people in the industry about the different challenges that they're facing and that kind of stuff, and really what we deal with is not what politicians say that we deal with or think that we deal with. Our job is very, very different from what I think most people believe it is. And I think being able to discuss that
So
would
can you give
be
me an
really
example?
interesting. Well, a lot of people think that our job is, a 9-month year, pretty, you know, cakewalk kind of thing where you get summers off and you don't work that much and whatever. But those of us that do it well, we work 60 to 80-hour weeks during the school
W-
year.
Will you be working this week, Keith?
This week, yeah, and I'm on summer.
Okay.
I mean, that's the nature of it. I have stuff that I have to get ready for next year. I'm the only person in my district that teaches forensics. And in order to do it well, I have to continuously learn. And I will be doing that. I will be prepping new stuff and all of that. And I think that these are the kinds of things that these are the kind of stories that aren't told. And I think it would be interesting to talk about them.
I have a tie-in question.
Okay.
Why do you like blowing things up so much?
Because it's fun.
Yeah.
So did one of my students contact you and ask you that? Um, because that is my reputation, is that um, if something can be blown up or lit on fire, um, it's probably going to happen. Uh, because it's
So
fun,
so
because it's
so
interesting,
clue
because
in a couple of people, that don't know exactly what you're talking about,
okay,
so they don't get some misassumptions there.
no, so I currently teach chemistry and forensics. In forensics, we do an arson unit where the students build out of popsicle sticks and glue houses, and including all the interior rooms and everything. And then they have a story about why the arson was set and where it was set, and then they actually light a fire in that room, and we watch how it propagates through the house. So that way you can see, like, because the fire department shows up before the whole thing burns down. But how can you go back and look um, at where it started and based on the evidence that's there and that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, we light stuff on fire. It's fun. In chemistry, you put metallic sodium in water and it
Shh,
explodes.
you're not supposed to say that too loud, Keith.
Why?
Well, somebody might get carried away with that formula.
You can't get your hands on it. That's the thing, is
Oh,
you have
okay.
to have the ability to get it. You can make green and blue and pink fire using certain metals and that kind of stuff, and that's what we do. And my job on top, in order to do my job well, I can't just, hey, here's the information, kids. I have to get the kids to want to learn it, to be excited about it. And there's nothing more exciting than having something blow up or catching something on fire or anything like that. And I am fortunate that my subject area, being science, allows me to do that kind of stuff. When I taught physics, because I am a physicist by training, we built a 6-foot tall trebuchet and launched pumpkins. And those kids learned projectile motion as well as any students I've ever taught.
Nice. I learned
Um,
projectile motion in baseball.
yeah, Similar. Um,
Coming off a bat, I was a center fielder. I was like, I
yep.
need to figure out where that ball's going to go in a split second and start
Or
going.
well, one of the things when you start looking at fluid dynamics and basically it's how you can use like an airplane wing for lift or spin a baseball and make it curve. Um, I could show my students. We use tennis balls because the they're lighter and the fuzz on them makes them spin easier and curve more. But I showed students how to throw a slider and why it worked and all of that. So you really have to get in. I mean, we can talk about it and you can draw pictures on a whiteboard, but who cares? Like that's boring. Go in and do it. Do something with it. That's what gets kids involved and caring and that kind of stuff. And that's how I go about stuff, which is okay. Maybe it's partly why I work so hard and why my job is so time consuming. I could phone it in the way most people think that teachers do and just get up there and talk about random crap on a whiteboard. But that's not my job. My job is to actually get the students to learn things. Um, and doing that right takes time.
So I'm going to give you a series of 10 questions,
Uh-oh.
and you have to answer each question within 10 seconds.
Oh man. Okay. I'm ready.
If you didn't live where you live now, what is your number one place you would consider moving to?
San Diego.
Do you plan on attending any training camp practices this year?
Yes.
What is your most prized Seahawk item?
Um, my painting of the Seahawks Stadium.
Nice. Where does the Seahawks offense finish in scoring this season?
Second.
And the defense?
19th.
That's the wrong answer, by the way. Which player on offense are you most excited to see play this season?
DK Metcalf.
Do you think that Jody Allen has been a good owner? Why or why not?
In Seattle for the Seahawks, absolutely. She has done a great job. In Portland for the Trailblazers, no.
Can the
Um,
Seahawks win the Super Bowl within the next 2 seasons?
yes.
Who is your favorite Seahawks coach not named Pete Carroll?
Chuck Knox.
Good job, Keith. Successful. Oh, I have one more. Bonus.
Oh,
I have bonus. Last concert you went to, and was it any good?
the last concert I went to was the Eagles at Moda Center in April, not that long ago. And it was a freaking phenomenal show. Easily the best concert I've ever been to, which granted, now I haven't been to that many concerts and you've been to millions. But
The
that
harmonies in that show are just amazing.
was fantastic. And for guys that have been around doing this as long as they have, the energy that they showed and to do like 36 songs
Wow.
and play for 3.5 hours
Wow.
um, with that much energy and everything. It was an absolutely amazing show. Um,
Nice. Nice. Love to hear that.
but
That's great.
part of it, I took my dad, who's more were when the Eagles were current, and releasing music. That was more his time. Um, and I took my son, my 12-year-old. So it's 3 generations of Myers guys, going to the Eagles concert, and it was a special day. It really was.
That's awesome. Those are great memories for sure. All right, Keith, you're going to wind us up. What do you got? You got anything left?
Um, so I got a couple. Um, you said you don't have regrets. What do you think the Seahawks regret most?
In its current form,
Just in
its
general.
current in general. I think that the Nordstroms have had a long-standing regret on selling this franchise to Ken Behring. and what that did to the team and the culture and the standing of their legacy. And I think that there are, and they may not even be alive. John Nordstrom, et cetera, may not even be around anymore. But I think that was a regret that grew over time and then really surfaced after Ken Behring did what he did. I think. Other than that, Keith, this franchise is, other than the Ken Behring years, this franchise has been very lucky, very well run, very fortunate to have Paul Allen and now Jody to be the owners. Very fortunate. We just did a history show the other day where we talked about the coaches. There's been 8 franchise coaches in this history. We're almost to our 50th season, which is extremely good stability.
And one of those was Mora for 1 year.
Yeah. Very good stability. Then you had, yeah. Very good stability. We've had some good quarterbacks. We've had some bad quarterbacks, but we've had some decent quarterbacks. You take a look at Hasselbeck and then transitioning into Wilson. And those are the quarterbacks that got us to the Super Bowls.
Yeah, but that was a 3-year process.
Yeah, but nonetheless, that's more than a lot of franchises can say. And I'm just comparing them to, other franchises out there. We did pretty good. And you take a look at Jim Zorn and Dave Craig. We got to the AFC Championship game when we were in the AFC with Dave Craig. So we've had some success. There's been a lot of down things, but when you take a look at the whole franchise, there's not a lot of regrets there. There's some growing pains, but it's turned out really well. You go take a look at the best franchises over the course of the last however many decades, and the Seahawks are in the top 15. We're not in the we're not in the bottom. We're not even close to bad franchises that are out there, mismanaged franchises that have made really bad decisions. This has been a pretty decent ride, really.
Interesting. Okay. The inverse of that, of all the different things that have happened with this team, besides the Super Bowl win, what is the team most proud of?
I think in the current era of Pete Carroll, Pete would be most interested in hearing about the legacy of not necessarily his legacy, but of his players' legacy, about how good human beings that they were, about leading through examples and outside of your own self-interest and giving back to the communities and so forth. There's a lot of pride that happens there that most fans aren't aware of, that happens on a regular basis, that I think that you can definitely hang your hat on. You take a look at the Paul Allen era overall, and there's just a lot to be proud of there with Paul's philanthropic giving and the way that he saved the franchise in addition to that. And yeah, I mean, it's been a great community unifier, this franchise, I think, overall in its 45 plus years of existence. And it's hard to imagine the community, and it's broad now, not just in Seattle. I live in Phoenix. There are Seahawk fans across the world that are unified under one thing. And that's, it's a franchise, but it's more than that. It's a community.
Nice. That's a great way for us to end this.
Yeah. Cool. Well, we appreciate everyone out there, really. I mean, this show's for us, but really we're hoping that a few people along the way listen and watch and enjoy it as much as we do. And I think that's proven out over time, and we've been around for a while. We're up to this is our 466th episode, this show. And
that's crazy.
And we don't plan on slowing down. We're going to be there for a while, and hopefully gain some viewers and good followers along the way, and we'll keep putting out content that hopefully everyone enjoys. And yeah, it's been a great ride, really. It's been awesome. All right. Anything else? we'll get out of here.
No, let's get out of here. It's been 2 hours and
On the money.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Find Keith on Twitter at Mars NFL. You can find me at NWC Hawk. The show is at Hawks Playbook on Twitter. Seahawks Playbook Podcast is the show name. You can find us on your favorite podcast platforms anywhere, really. Amazon, Google, Apple. I was going to say Stitcher, but they just decided to go out of business in August, so I won't mention them. iHeartRadio, etc. And then on YouTube, we've got our own YouTube channel. You can find us there, Seahawks Playbook Podcast. When you do, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, leave us a review on the other shows where you can, and that would be great. So until next time, go Hawks.